Welcome to Lessons with Mr. Clark. Today we will be talking about decimal rounding and ordering. I encourage you to watch the video on whole number rounding and ordering before this. Okay, from that video you remember when we talked about rounding, a basic little poem, rhyme, something to help you remember how to round. We said locate your number, look right next door, 5 or higher, add 1 more, 4 or lower, just ignore. So let's rewrite that here. Locate your number, look right next door, 5 or higher, add 1 more, 4 or lower, just ignore. So that was with whole numbers. It's the same with rounding, just with one additional rule. We're going to drop the numbers to the right of your last non-zero number. So we won't write them. We will ignore them. Drop the digits to the right of your last non-zero number. And we'll talk about that as we get going here. When I mean drop, that doesn't mean go to the lower. It's just don't even write them. Forget about them. I could say forget would be the same thing. Okay, looking in the box here. Locate, round 484 thousandths to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so remember we find our decimal first, and we go tenths, hundredths. So the 8 is in my hundredths place. So this is going to be closer to 480 thousandths or 490 thousandths. So it's either closer, remember we're going to drop that 0, to 48 hundredths or 49 hundredths. It's one or the other. Those are my only two options. Okay, because this new rule tells us we're going to drop that last 0. So 48 hundredths or 49 hundredths. How do we know? Well, we look right next door. 5 or higher, we'd add 1 more. 4 or lower, we ignore. So 4 is lower, so we ignore it. So it's 48 hundredths. All right. 48 hundredths is the same as 480 thousandths. It's just not as precise. They're the same thing. They equal each other in math. Science, we use them a little different. So that's why we're not going to add that 0 to it. Okay, we're going to round 47 and 851 thousandths to the nearest tenth. Okay, so locate my number, the 8. So it's going to either be 47.8 or 47.9. How do we know? We look at the 5 next door. That makes us round up. So it's 47 and 9 tenths. It's a little bit closer to it. 851 thousandths, if we looked at it on a number line. So if we have 47.8 here on our number line and 47.9 here on our number line, it's going to be just slightly closer to this side. All right, next round. Oh, here's a doozy. 4,699 10,000ths to the nearest thousandth. Okay, so I got to find my thousandths. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Oh, that's clearly going to round up. It's way closer. 470 thousandths. Now, looking at our rule, this is equally acceptable. 47 hundredths. It's the same as 470 thousandths. Those are both equal. So you could write either of those numbers and get by with it. Okay. All right, let's compare decimals now. First, I want to talk about the concept of annexing zeros. We had just said that 47 hundredths is the same as 470 thousandths. In the same way as 5 dimes, 50 cents is the same as 5 dimes, is 5 tenths. 5 tenths and 50 hundredths are the exact same thing. So to annex zeros, it means placing a 0 to the right of your last digit in a decimal. It doesn't change the value. Placing a 0 to the right. It's got to be all the way to the right of a decimal. In science, it helps with precision. In math class, it means the same thing. So we could take 6/10 to annex a zero would be 60 hundredths. 6 dimes is the same as 60 pennies. Okay, so now when we order decimals, we line up the decimals vertically. We've been in the habit of lining up the commas, the periods. Decimals make it even easier. Then we can annex zeros as necessary. You don't always have to annex zeros. A lot of times you can. Then we're going to compare digits left to right, just like we did with whole numbers. Okay, so let's look at these examples here. Example A. 3 88/100. We're going to line up the decimals vertically. 3 89/100. We don't have to annex any zeros. We look left to right. The 3's are the same. The 8's are the same. 9 is bigger than 8. So our Pac-Man or alligator wants to eat the bigger one. 3 88/100 is less than 3 89/100. Okay, example B now. 7/10 or 70/100. We line up the decimals vertically. Then we annex zeros as necessary. Ooh, we do want to annex a zero. We have, the second one has a 0 in the hundredths, so we're going to add a 0 to the, we're going to annex a 0 to 7/10. Okay, so now we're going to compare left to right. Same, same, same. These two are equal. 7 dimes is the same as 70 pennies. That looks too squiggly. We don't want it squiggly. Straight line. Okay, example C. Line them up vertically. 6 5/10 and 6 8/100. We do have to annex a 0 here. Okay. Now we look left to right. 6's are the same. The tenths place value is different. 5 is bigger than 0. So 6 5/10 is more than, greater than 6 8/100. $6 and 5 dimes is bigger than $6 and 8 pennies. Even though 8's bigger than 5. All right, let's do this with several numbers on our example over here on the right. Order these numbers from least to greatest. So first thing I want to do is line up these numbers all vertically. And we do that by lining up the decimals. 5 and 108 thousandths. 5 and 1/10. 5 and 1,082 10,000ths, 5 and 18/100. All right, that was step 1, line up the decimals vertically. Step 2, annex zeros as necessary. We have to go all the way to the thousands place. So we're going to be annexing a lot of zeros on there. All right, then step 3, compare digits left to right. They all start with a 5, so we can ignore those 5's. They all have a 1 in the tenths place, so we can ignore those. This last one here has an 8 in the hundredths place, so we know this one's our biggest. So we can go ahead and put it the biggest on our list. That's the greatest. Everything else is going to be smaller than that, and then we can get rid of it. Okay, then we look at the hundredths. That's all the same. Then we look at the thousandths. This one has a 0 in it, so it's the smallest. That's the 5 and 1/10, all the way to the smallest. Now we're just comparing these two. Okay, then this one has a 0, this has a 2, so the 2 is bigger. So 5, and that leaves us with, okay, I know it looks kind of sloppy. Before you move on, you want to check through that and make sure that all makes sense. Check them all, less than, less than, less than. All right, in conclusion, today we learned about comparing decimals and we learned about rounding decimals. Thanks for joining. I hope you have a great day.